You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
A kiss, as defined by Dan Webster, is something pleasing, a caress, a gentle touch. But there's another kiss that isn't in Webster's.
Hey world, we're kids!
Some critics say they don't make music, they just make noise.
Yeah, Kiss sucks!
Kiss implies the extreme in the theatrics on stage, utilizing fire and smoke and bizarre costumes, and the ever-consistent, constant concealment of their true identities.
Speaking of which, Kiss is going to have its own comic book soon.
Take Kiss with you. It's fun. Show your friends and be the first. Now.
Oh my God, no time to turn!
And welcome once again to No Time to Turn, a Kiss Nerd podcast.
Nerds.
Yup. And joining me as always are Cap and Alex from the Something Good For You podcast.
Yo.
What's going on?
I don't know if y'all have had the time to check out the Something Good For You podcast, but it's something...
It's something good.
Something good.
And it can be for you.
Yeah. I say it's good for everybody.
I gotta say it correctly. It's something good for ya.
Yeah. Why?
For yous.
So check that out if y'all get a chance. And meanwhile, we're glad you're joining us here on No Time to Turn. And we are now going to jump into the year 1979 with the
pinnacle of Kiss's success.
Maybe the beginning of the decline. But this is the album Dynasty, and we're going to look at all things Dynasty and Dynasty related. Mm-hmm. And this is 1979.
Yes. Finally wrapped up our 78 series. We covered double platinum, the solo albums, the TV movie, all the merchandising, all the big stuff.
So yeah, definitely listen to those episodes if you haven't already.
And 1978 was such a big year for Kiss. And, here they're starting the year in the studio. Now, this is only a few months after the airing of their television movie, Kiss Meet the Phantom of the Park. Mm-hmm. Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. We had to clarify that in the last episode.
Yeah, there's various versions of the title. But yeah, they get into the studio starting in January of 1979.
I have it that they're in Electric Lady.
I have Electric Lady and the Record Plant.
I think they mixed at Record Plant.
Okay.
I believe so. And you know what's weird is it almost has that Electric Lady sound to the record. That studio really has a sound.
Well, you know what's interesting is this is the last sessions in Electric Lady that used the original console that was installed when Hendrix built the place.
I wonder if there's something to that.
There may well be, but that's, I don't know that the average listener would pick up on such nuances.
No, but we would.
Kiss nerds,
yeah, or just
that old console has mojo.
Say, I'm the kind of guy that would like to listen for that kind of shit, though. So I'm going to go definitely look into Electric Lady again and kind of pick that apart.
So this is January of '79. Mm-hmm. They brought in Vinnie Poncia to produce. Who of course produced Peter's solo album.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Upon Peter's request.
This was a concession to Peter, but also I think because he got such good results out of Peter, probably both not only professionally but personally as well. He could work with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it was also one of those where it's like, as Peter was prone to do, you get me. You do this for me, or I'm leaving the band.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. How seriously they would have ever taken those kind of threats. I think if they had a very clear idea of who they wanted to produce that with someone else, they would have gone with it regardless of what Peter said, and Peter would have gone with it too because it.
Honestly, I think they were just going down the path of least resistance.
Yeah, well, maybe, but I mean, I think
that's a good point, though.
I think really, I think they would have done what they wanted to do. I think
absolutely, but I mean, you also have to think about where they are at the time. Every book, every account talks about that, by this point in their careers, everyone has like a personal bodyguard that's been, trained to know what their likes and dislikes are and what they need and don't need beforehand at shows and everything else. Mm-hmm. So it almost seems like if they're dealing already with four volatile, rock stars like this, if Peter is going to continue with the sort of behavior he seems to exhibit when he gets a little flustered and frustrated, rightfully so or not, I wouldn't see that maybe as too far of a stretch for them to go, okay, fine, we'll just use his producer. This is supposed to be the return of Kiss. Let's just get this out.
You said flustered and frustrated. Could also use the word high.
Yes.
I mean,
this is that era. I mean, they've made no bones about it. Peter has been pretty forthright and open in his book about, this is cocaine time.
yeah, and this is right after a huge car accident that he went through and everything too.
And that's going to play into the, I think, to a certain extent. But, for good or for not, they seem to be incorporating Peter into the decision-making process. So, that could be, I think that's important to note, because I don't know if he even notices that or feels that way, but they're saying, okay, you know what, let's use your guy here. And you would think going into it that using his guy would mean, hey, let's use more Peter on this album.
That wound up not being the case.
That wound up being quite not the case.
Yeah.
Now it is alleged because of the car wreck, and we mentioned this in the previous episode at the end of the filming, but that's the previous spring.
Yes. And when I was reading that little blurb about the car accident, the article that was mentioning it said that Peter would have, fast recovery and be ready to finish his solo album.
Yeah. Well,
so he was still in the process of making his 78 solo record when that accident happened.
Well,
he should have been
But
fine.
he doesn't play on the whole of his own solo album.
No, but they were saying, but still, that was a year ago. And he was still, regardless of his problems, he still would have been.
Not quite a year. It's
It's
the end of May.
The next year.
So 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this was a choice made by Poncia himself, too.
Yeah. Basically saying that he didn't feel Peter was up to snuff.
Maybe. I don't feel
that's everything I was reading.
They used Peter on one track, and we'll get to the thing, but obviously they brought in Anton Fig to do the sessions, and he cuts his tracks in about 10 days.
The thing is,
I think they paid him like $15,000 to do it, which not a bad little payday for.
That's also some hush money.
Yeah.
Well, that's understood that he wasn't going to get credited.
And I find it interesting too. It's like, Anton was such a thunderous force on Ace's record. It seems like he intentionally dialed it back for the Kiss record.
I'm sure he's a professional. It makes me curious as to what his musical tastes were and what his influences were, because. He ends up in a kind of a dance rock band called Spider.
I actually checked that out after we talked about it.
And it's important to note the term. I think this is an important distinction. Dance rock. This is a kind of a new thing that we're coming out of the disco era. This album gets called disco a lot. It's not a disco record.
It's
not.
Really even on Wikipedia under genre, it says hard rock / disco.
It's not disco, and I have reasons why I'll say that. But before we get there,
this isn't getting into it, but I would honestly argue the next record has a lot more disco elements than this one does.
Disco is completely dead by the time they do the next record.
But I would say there's more elements in that one than this one.
I would disagree, but we'll get there. Now there's a underling in coin management, Rick Aliberte, who has made a deal to have Kiss as the grand marshals in the Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans.
Okay.
However, and they're getting lined up on this. Apparently, there's an offer on the table from a promoter to put a stadium show together in the Superdome as part of the whole thing. Any of this. Well, because none of this happens,
right? Well, I'm talking about like even the hearsay story of it starting up.
It gets they get it rolling, and then all of a sudden, apparently, there is a strike by the police in New Orleans, which scuttles the security efforts, and they feel like it's going to turn into
a riot or something.
Well, they were unsure that the security would be strong enough to manage. So the whole deal gets scrubbed.
Yeah.
There's another opportunity later on, I think, where they attempt again. There's coins that are available. There were novelty coins that were struck
during the Creatures of the Night era. Yes, and it was to celebrate their 10th anniversary. That you said that pulled up a random memory. We'll go over that.
We'll get over that whenever we get there.
But I do know exactly what you're talking about.
The reason why I bring it up is not to confuse the two different events. They're not, I think sometimes they get conflated. But this is early '79. there was a deal that was they were trying to incorporate Kiss as part of Mardi Gras.
Yeah,
which
that would just happen a few years later.
makes sense. But okay, so we get into the Dynasty album, and like we said, we've got. I guess they had a brief flirtation with Giorgio Moroder.
And what's he,
He is
normally associated with?
the Euro disco guy. I mean, he did.
Okay.
I think he was producing Donna Summer's early stuff, and then he did lots of different things. You'd have to look it up. Did the Midnight Express soundtrack?
Okay.
The theme song, of which, of course, the wrestling
Midnight
tag team
Express
would use all through the '80s, which, of course, has been erased from all their current WWE programs because they don't own the content rights to it.
Right.
But
it is what it is.
But they used a lot of that music for sports stuff. It wasn't just that wrestling company, but
Gotcha.
a lot. A lot of instrumental kind of.
Now, was Donna Summer still on Casablanca at this
Oh,
time?
yeah.
That could have been an easy hookup. Whether it was
I don't know. I don't really know the ins and outs on that. I just know that they evidently they made some effort to do something with him, and it went nowhere. At what point this happened, I don't know. That could be late. It could have been late '78.
Mm-hmm.
This is the longest stretch of downtime I think Kiss has had. I mean,
For
this
studio
is
time, probably.
for anything. I mean, they've from their last little bit of work they've had going on was the filming of Kiss Meets the Phantom,
Mm-hmm.
and that they did a show. What do I got here? They did the show at Magic Mountain on May 19th. So they've got 6 months of downtime here to prepare for this next album cycle.
Not even any one-offs or anything like that.
Yeah, because there's a website called Kiss78soloalbums.com, and it's a offshoot of the Kiss FAQ. And there's like a full timeline of their 78. And yeah, after they wrap up with recording filming the movie, there's like a little bit of like post-production stuff that they're still working on with their solo records. But I mean, the solo records come out like a month later.
So it's not like there's not stuff happening. And I know that I know Paul at least did some in-store stuff, and I think some radio appearances to promote his solo album.
But nobody
then
did
the movie comes out on October 28th.
So even though it was downtime, and they're even billing this record as the return of Kiss, they were still rolling.
They were still rolling hard. There's a lot going on here. So they're in the studio, and they start making the Dynasty record. Do we want to we'll just start trudging this track by track here?
Yeah. Before we go into that, I think it's interesting that this is one of the first Kiss records where you really start seeing whoever wrote the song plays the majority of the instruments.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Because in the personnel, it says for Paul Stanley, he does, of course, vocals, rhythm, guitar, and then leads on Sure Know Something, Magic Touch, and bass on I Was Made for Loving You. Mm-hmm. And then for Gene...
Paul plays bass on it?
Yep, that's what it quotes it as.
That's because I was going to ask, that's an unusual bass line. It's not a Gene bass line to me.
Same thing with a lot of the Ace tracks.
Yep, it was as Gene Simmons vocals, bass, and then rhythm guitar on X-Ray Eyes. And then Ace vocals, lead guitar, and all guitars and bass on 2000 Man, Hard Times, and Save Your Love.
Ace plays everything on all his songs except for the drums.
Yep. Yeah, and they all kind of were in their own little camps cutting the demos for these songs separately too.
We see, and we talked about this in the previous episode, we see that the group is becoming even more fragmented as they've already set themselves up to compete against each other with the solo albums.
Yep.
Now the solo albums have come out. None of them have been a hit.
No.
The closest,
except really for Ace's single.
But what Ace's single, as we talked about in his episode, doesn't really peak until the spring of '79. So that hasn't happened yet.
No.
So my impression always was, looking at this album, that they saw that Ace's solo album was the most successful, and therefore they gave him a lot more leeway on this record, because Ace has 3 songs, which is a lot.
Yeah.
But maybe not when you think about it, because maybe the only thing that makes it seem like a lot is because he's actually singing them. Whereas prior he would write songs, but Gene would sing them or Peter would sing them. So it's not even that necessarily they're giving him more room. It just feels like it because he's singing them. And then, of course, of his 3 songs, one's a cover. But we'll get to that. Do we just...
And then they also talk about Peter recorded and submitted a 4-track demo with the songs Out of Control, which later showed up on his 80s solo record. Rumble, which still hasn't really been released outside of bootlegs. And then Dirty Livin', and There's Nothing Better. I've not really heard much on There's Nothing Better.
Have you listened to these demos?
Off and on, not recently heading into this, but I've heard the demos for Out of Control and Dirty Livin' before.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to that.
And then Ace, he recorded a 5-track demo, Hard Times, Save Your Love, 2000 Man, and then 2 other songs, Backstage Pass and Insufficient Data.
Insufficient data, Star Child.
That's what I was about to say. Insufficient data at the moment, Star Child. Gene wrote a large number of demos, including some with the members of band Virgin. Now, I've never really heard of Virgin.
I've heard different things about Virgin. It was a group that he was developing. I guess it was essentially a boy band.
Interesting.
Was this when he was starting to form Simmons Records or whatever?
This is way before that.
Okay.
But
Simmons Records was 2000s.
He's got this hyper-inflated sense of self-worth that he's going to be a mogul in some level of some
discovered
sort.
Van Halen and yada yada.
Yeah. And so Virgin is a group that he's developing, and I don't know if they were a vocal group or because my understanding was they were still learning to play their instruments, that these were basically teenage boys.
Interesting.
And the name Virgin, blah, blah, blah. I might have that wrong, though. That might be 120% wrong.
So weird, but
it seems like I have that in my head somewhere, and, I don't know. Or they were young guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
Paul wrote I don't have any notes on this or to be able to verify that, but that's the way I understood it.
Yeah, and then it says Paul wrote songs with Desmond Child, one called The Fight, which was later released on a Desmond Child and Rouge album called Tonight. And then that song Tonight was later turned into I Was Made for Loving You.
Yeah.
Yep, and this is the beginning of the Desmond Child involvement in Kiss that would continue.
Well, then, is this looks like a good point to jump in here.
I think so.
Yep.
I Was Made for Loving You, like you said, it was originally titled Tonight, the partnership with
Desmond Child.
Mm-hmm.
And then
would it be fair to even say that Paul discovered Desmond Child?
Based on everything,
he's used the Desmond Child and Rouge. It was a guy and 2 girls. They were technically a vocal group, I guess.
And it was like an underground New York thing.
It's sort of like a disco version, I guess, of Tony Orlando and Dawn.
Something along those lines. I've never listened to any Rouge songs except for one. And the one song that I checked out was pretty cool. So I don't think you can find any of their stuff on Spotify or anything like that.
Every once in a while, their albums pop up at where I go digging for records, or album, I should say. I've only seen one. I don't know if they did more than one, but I have never bought it or listened to it. I should have probably picked it up.
I honestly think that I don't think Paul discovered him. I think it was a perfect storm of things that kind of happened all at once, because looking at a little bit of his background in his career, the first thing that's really mentioned is that band. And then the next thing mentioned is that one of the songs, let's see, I just had it and then it went away from me. Okay, the band was known for their inclusion on the soundtrack of The Warriors in 1979.
Well, this is 1979.
That's what I'm saying. Paul's already working with him before that part happened.
Yeah, I thought my understanding is he brought them to Casablanca.
So I think that Desmond already hit something and didn't know it. And then Paul was also reaping the benefits of that before the popularity happened. And then I Was Made for Loving You and the Warriors soundtrack almost hit at the same time.
Yeah, but the Warriors soundtrack wasn't a hit or anything.
But it is saying that's one of the things he's noted for.
So
it may not be in our bubble.
Way overshadows that.
Yeah. In our bubble, maybe.
That movie, The Warriors, when it came out, they had actual gang violence at some of the theaters, and so there was a lot of controversy about it.
Okay, so I don't know a lot of the backstory on that.
Yeah, I remember all this going on, and it seemed like it was almost like it got squashed before it even got any. It wasn't. Now there is a gang in the Warriors called the Baseball Furies, and they have painted faces, and that was directly inspired by Kiss. Now they don't have Kiss-like faces, but the incorporation of a face paint was inspired by Kiss. The costume designer of the movie has stated.
And
as
one more
such.
little sidetrack to even work off what you said, just pulling up reception for the Warriors, just to get a little bit of background on that. It said for the box office, after 2 weeks free of incidents, the studio expanded the display ads to take advantage of reviews from reputable critics, including The New Yorker. So that even leads in right there, saying 2 weeks free of incidents meant that they were worried about that release.
Yeah, well, I remember it being in theaters, and I remember that controversy, but
But I don't know. I think it's given Paul a little bit too much to say he discovered Desmond
that's
Child.
what I'm just curious, because I'm
That's my
pretty sure
opinion.
I was under the impression that he brought them to Casablanca and helped get them signed.
Either
But I
way.
might be wrong about that. I just have that in my head. So this track, though, I Was Made for Loving You. This is a statement track that Kiss is not the Kiss that you were listening to 2 years prior.
The flagship track for this resurgence, so the return of Kiss.
This so-called return of Kiss.
I would say the only song on the record that sounds disco, maybe aside from Dirty Living.
Well, it's got the 4 on the floor dance beat. Mm-hmm. That's the disco signature.
And Paul always tells that story of hanging out at Studio 54, and then he heard that like every song had the same BPM, and he found out what it was.
He wanted to
He wanted to go home and write a song. Then he got up with Desmond Child and wrote it.
But this is still it's a guitar-driven song. I listened to it again this afternoon, and I was like, this song, even the guitars, you would think they'd be a lot cleaner. To get more of they're still pretty gravelly. It's got Ace's lead on it.
Nope, that's Paul's lead.
No, that is not Paul Stanley.
You sure?
I'm not. Well, I can't say that definitively, but I would say most assuredly. I don't care what gets the credit. That's an Ace Frehley guitar lick. I've heard one.
That's like those little stutter kind of little riffs or leads that he does.
Surprised it's actually Tommy Thayer.
Yeah. But to be fair, in the disco comparison, he has in the middle the falsetto that kind of calls to mind the Bee Gees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But again, this is not the band of just a few years prior.
Nope.
This is a new model Kiss. They have embraced what I would call, I think the key word here would be contemporary.
Yeah.
But the problem with being contemporary is it stamps you to a certain time. And this album, and maybe it's only because of my own sense of growing up in nostalgia, because this is, I was old enough to really, I can remember getting the single for this before the album was out.
Now, did you have the extended maxi single?
I have since gotten it, yes.
Okay.
I was going to mention there is a 12-inch dance remix of this that's 8 minutes long.
Yeah.
I haven't spent time with that yet.
And it's a different mix. It's interesting, but it's not so interesting that you
have to have
it.
You
could live your whole life and never have heard it.
You can almost imagine what it's like. Just extend the...
It just basically loops the song.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going like, I'm sure I know exactly how it sounds.
Yep.
and
imagine just being whacked out of your mind on cocaine and everything else and just hearing that for 8 minutes straight in that fucking dance club.
Kind of like when they used to put classical music. There was like a whole 70s summer they put classical music through a disco beat loop.
Well, see, now that's what I'm saying is the signature of all disco is it has the orchestration, the string section, and this has no string section. This is really a dance rock song.
Yeah. There's synth.
There is a synth, but this is it's influenced. It's coming from disco, the era of disco, but disco is dying. And this is more, to me, this has more of a European flavor to it, which the European dance music didn't have as much that lush orchestration and what have you. It seems like American disco was largely informed by like the Philadelphia R&B kind of thing, which had always had the the big symphonic score underneath or whatever.
And now taking out Strutter 78
played off of that, and because the Bee Gees had such success, that really is what informed the quote unquote disco sound.
Yeah, I can see that. And taking out Strutter 78, would you say that this is the first time that Kiss broke their trend of being trend followers and no longer trend setters?
Oh, absolutely. But I never would say they were trend setters. We've talked about that. Paul's a great stylist. He's a great aggregator of ideas and recycling them in a way that feel fresh and new, but you can still call them to mind. Okay, and here he's doing it again. It's just here he's doing it
a lot more blatant.
More blatantly to get, he's like, I'm going to do this. And they do it. And, the fucked up thing about it is they do it really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this song.
But it's quite unexpected coming from Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back, what I was going to say, looking back at this, it still feels very 1979 to me.
I like it a lot.
It sounds like I imagine in my head, like I have this, I call it the Superman effect, because Superman had this visual design that seemed very, modern at the time. And because they filmed both those movies back to back, but they came out in different times, the Superman and Superman 1, they filmed the two Superman movies consecutively at the same time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so that era seems to be encapsulated by this kind of what I see as not, like late 80s is very pastel color. Early 70s is very muted colors. This is kind of like a crystalline, kind of, I don't know.
It takes you back to a certain
it's like,
time
it just
piece.
feels very like, I don't know, kind of almost like...
You don't want to say dated, but...
Yeah, well, it's definitely dated. That's my point. And that's what I mean by contemporary. It kind of puts a hard stamp on this is of this time. It's, early Kiss, production value and stuff, but you can still... It transcends its own time, which all great rock and roll does. I don't think this is ever going to be able to transcend its time. It's a statement of its era.
No, and
particularly this song.
And from folks that were there, like, I've seen interviews of guys that were in bands in the 70s and 80s that still call this the disco song.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think that's because there's no other frame of reference. You can't get around it. Like I said, that 4 on the floor dance beat.
Whereas like guys like me and Alex who weren't there see it as a, really cool Kiss song, from,
I see
with
it,
disco.
I see it as what we were talking about earlier with Anton's shit. It's dance rock.
Yeah.
It's a dance rock thing. And this is going to, this becomes more kind of a flavor of music that exists for the next several years. But then
now we're going to talk about each song as deftly as we did that one.
Oh, maybe
That's
not.
a huge one.
We'll just roll with it. So, and then it goes kind of a left turn. It goes into
a cover
song of a Rolling Stone song.
Yeah.
But again, Ace shines with his covers.
And didn't want to choose this one at first either. Or didn't want to record this one at first.
It's a Rolling Stones cover, 2000 Man, which appears originally on the Satanic Majesties record for the Stones.
Satanic?
Yeah.
Knights in Satan's service.
The devil.
That's why they chose it. This works for Ace.
It does, especially with the computer-themed elements and the
Growing
futuristic.
funny flowers outside his windowsill.
But you know what? I don't know that this works so well for Kiss.
Really?
I don't know. It doesn't have the Stonesy swagger. And I kind of wonder if Ace and Peter had played on, or excuse me, Paul and Peter had played on this, maybe they would have pulled out some of that swagger. Now, I'm saying this to a point because we're going to explore another song that could have had a Stonesy swagger also and doesn't.
Well, I'm saying we do get a version with Paul and Peter
when they play it live, but
on the MTV
that's why
Unplugged.
I say they also played it on the tour.
Yeah, I'm referring MTV Unplugged.
Yeah. But it just, I don't know. I think
it's a great Kiss song. I think it's a great Ace song. I think it fits because this song fits right next to New York Groove.
Yeah, but I don't, Ace didn't want to do that song. So
Ace didn't want to do any song that wound up being his hits. He didn't want to do those, and then in the 90s he didn't want to do Ya, and that's what brought him back from the ditches on that. So Ace just needs to learn to shut up and listen to people.
Right. But he obviously chose this. It's just it seems like it's an odd choice of a cover.
I don't know.
For Kiss, like I said, it fits better to Ace, but it just, I don't know. There's something about this. This feels anomalous to the rest of the album.
Oh man, I'd say there's another song on here that feels anomalous too. I feel this fits right in, especially the first three. Made for Loving You, 2000 Man, Sure Knows Something. I feel like all of those lead into each other perfect.
It's a weird clunk between the two songs here because the next song, Sure Knows Something.
That's pretty disco too. Well, I mean, not disco.
That's
it's a little bit
R&B. But let's stay on 2000 Man. The reason I say it's not that different is it's not like a punch you in the face song.
No.
It's not aggressive. It's not overly fast. And it even kind of comes in a little bit mild. It's just for the first half of the song.
Just guitars and
but
toms.
this seems to fall on the 1 and the 3 more than it does the 2 and the 4.
I think it just lands on the 1 over and over.
I know. That's what I mean. It's like, so that's what I'm saying. It's like it doesn't. That takes the swagger of a Stones feel out of it, and it kind of just lumbers a little bit.
I'm not even comparing
I like the song.
I'm
Don't
not comparing it to a Stones
like
song. I'm comparing it to everything else on the record, which is what we should be.
I'm kind of going. I'm looking at like. Well, we'll get to my point. I'll drive this point. Try to drive it home here in a minute. Sure know something.
Oh, we're moving. Okay.
Yeah, let's just keep it moving. Sure know something.
I like it. There we go. Now you don't talk.
Hey, I like this song too. I think it would have gone. It would have been perfect coming out of "I Was Made for Loving You."
This might be the strongest track on this album.
I'm looking at the album. I still think I
agree.
I still think "I Was Made for Loving You" is definitely the strongest. Context and historical.
I think vocal melody, song construction. Everything, even the way it builds, the solo,
the way it launches into every chorus with the guitar.
I love that bass line too.
The bass
build
line,
up,
and the word I come back to, and I've used this when we were discussing. We mentioned it on Paul's album and on Peter's too. Is that kind of very urban New York City kind of New York City at night kind of thing?
It even just starts out with that little bass line.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, to me. That gives the illusion of a disco feel, but there is nothing disco about this song at all. It doesn't even have the 4 on the floor on it.
And that's why I think that it leads in from 2000 Man Better. I think that 4 on the floor is only evident in "I Was Made for Loving You."
Well, and that's why I'm saying that makes why I say 2000 Man sounds kind of anomalous. It just seems like a weird. Maybe it's just the placement in between these two songs. It just feels
honestly,
like
do you think that maybe it's because you're also a Stones fan? Now, it's because look, I'm not as much of a Stones fan, so I don't relate this to the Rolling Stones.
Right.
I relate this 100% to
Kiss
Kiss
song,
Ace
and
Frehley.
I did for years.
Yeah.
So that's maybe my correlation is when I hear that song, the production value, and this is what I was trying to lead in with earlier when I was we were moving on, which is the production value, and it never really attacks you. So let's even pull it back to what we were talking about with the solo records. You were talking about with Paul and Peter's record, and even Gene's to an extent, that like their foot's on the gas, they're just not really giving it that full bit of extra oomph that they need to make it a good rock song.
On the break.
This song, I feel like, is holding on to that break a little bit, which keeps it in line with Dynasty. I feel like if they could have went full swagger with it, and then it would have went further off track.
Well, I agree, but as it is, I still think I think it might just be the placement. I think I could see putting like Magic Touch in that spot, which we'll get to. But it's an odd placement between these two songs. It just doesn't. It disrupts the flow to me when I listen to it as an album.
But Sure Know Something still is one of the. I think it is the
Sure
best
Know
on the record.
Something is probably the best song on this album. It's really good. It's really underrated.
I even like the little
I was
about to bring that up.
The way they put it all together. I mean, it's there. I think that it is not outside the Kiss wheelhouse to do this. This seems like to me.
I feel like this is more outside the Kiss wheelhouse than 2000 Man.
Or even "I Was Made for Loving You."
No,
I think "I Made Was Loving You" was the biggest jump.
That's the big jump.
That's the biggest jump.
Seems like this was a jump, but it seems like this would have been a progression that I could understand.
This sounds like the next song that would have been on Paul's solo record. You can't tell me I Was Made for Loving You would have fit on Love Gun, buddy.
Sure Know Something would.
Then She Kissed Me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come on, man. It's not that far disconnected.
I don't know. It's hard to say. But I can see it in the lineage. I can see the progression here. That makes sense to me.
And plus, so we can actually talk about this now, too. This was the first record to have music videos.
Yes.
And the video for this song is really cool because I like during the part, the floating heads, and then they kind of mimic the Dynasty album cover in a shot or two.
We'll get to that because these aren't filmed.
Well, I think we can just talk about it when we reach each song. I think that's just makes sense.
Well, there's a reason why I want to get to that because there's a key point to be made when they made those films.
Okay, well then we wait.
But I understand what you mean. No, we can reference them. I don't mind you referencing them. We're just not going to get us out of point here.
But then we get the one.
It does show also in the video that Paul plays the lead on it.
Yeah.
And I don't think Paul has a really good lead style. I mean, he's got his own style. He's got a feel.
He definitely does.
Like when they did it on you mentioned the Unplugged thing later, the pick scratch is always out of time. It always just drives me nuts. He comes in at the wrong spot. And I'm like,
didn't Bruce play the solo on MTV Unplugged?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I was going to say.
It doesn't have the same feel. Dirty Living. This is Peter's song. This is the one song he plays drums on. And this is the other song that I think could have really benefited if they had slowed it a bit, pulled out more swagger, it would have turned it into a very Stonesy barn burner. It has the potential. Not slowed down a lot, but it just...
Now, if you want to talk about New York swag, though...
This has a super dance rock kind of element to it, too.
Kind of. It's
funk. Because of that
it's
bass,
a little more. It's got more of a. It's
It's
not super funky, but it's got more of a funk edge to it, I guess. But and the way the way the lyric is delivered,
it honestly feels kind of New York urban,
but
and that works for Peter.
I think if they had turned it around a little bit, pulled in the tempo just a little bit to pull out of that swagger, it would have felt a lot more rootsy and R&B and less.
I think I would have liked it less.
Thing. Well, maybe so, but I just think it would have worked better because to me it sounds like otherwise it's kind of neutralized. And again, I listened to it again today.
How do you define neutralized? Because I've heard you use that a few times. I don't think I understand what you mean.
It just means like, how can I verbalize it? There's a certain element that rock and roll to me, like, it's really good when it's just got some raunch to it, where you just, your nose see my nose is wrinkling when I'm just thinking about it. There's it's got to have some stank on it.
And to me,
and this song has no stank on it.
See,
when I say neutralized, I'm like, it's just scrubbed clean. It's like
wholeheartedly agree on that. I feel like this song has the most stank out of all of them. It kicks in with, it almost sounds like that Ebo kind of thing with it again.
I don't think that's
I said something like that. But there's some
a
little
keyboard there.
There's still something. It kicks in. It's got that thumping heavy bass on it. Slowed down, it would have been plodding.
No, not slow.
If it had been bumped down a tick or two.
If you go too far, it would plod.
I love this.
But there's a point where it could really get raunched out, and it would have it could have been like.
I think it's already there. I think that raunchiness is
listening
there.
to it today, all I could think of is I could see Jimmy Durante going, yakatata, 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 yakatata.
And that's what you see. I see someone strutting down the streets of New York City, smacking hoes and doing dirty living.
I think it could have been dirtier. I just think the song could be dirtier, is I guess my point on that. But
honestly, I think this song has the most swag, if we're going to use that word, or vibe out of the whole record because of the tempo. It's a strut tempo,
right? But
which is the dirty living. If you listen to it, the lyrics wouldn't match up as if if we bumped it down 3 BPM. Talking about just that touch slower you're talking about. Bump it down even 3 BPM.
It could still strut.
It wouldn't be strutting like it is. It's strutting with a purpose right now. But early, because...
No, it wouldn't strut. It would swagger. That's the difference.
They won't strut.
I know, and I want swagger. I think this song... I think this is a missed opportunity. This is a missed opportunity to have a swagged out fucking raunchy rock and roll track, and instead they're going for something that's more, like you said, a strutting dance track. And that's, to me, I'm just like, this could have been a rock and roll song.
I'll throw this out.
It's not. And this is something where Peter really could have shined. And he does, but he could have shined brighter because this song could have been a fucking kick-ass rock and roll song.
My defense on Kiss playing slower swag songs ain't none of your business.
No, that's not slower swag. That's slow. That's not good. I'm talking like Mr. Speed.
See,
and again, you're not a Stones fan, so you're not hearing what I'm hearing.
Anyone
that knows the Stones well enough would understand completely what I mean by that.
No.
But this sounds...
I take umbrage to that. I know exactly what you're talking about. And the reason Mr. Speed works at that tempo and would have lost something if it had been sped up is the riff.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The riff in Dirty Livin'.
If you told it and pulled the riff out.
What is the riff in Dirty Livin'?
I don't...
That's the bass. That's not the rhythm.
I think part of it too.
It's really a keyboard.
The rhythm is just. Dun, dun,
I know,
dun,
but you can
dun,
do it
dun,
with a guitar.
Right, but they are doing that with the guitar. They're doing that
No,
while
I'm saying
the keys are doing the.
I'm saying that could be a riff.
Okay, well they can make that a riff, but that doesn't lend itself to something like Mr. Speed, where you've got the ba da 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 da, which gives it that Stonesy kind of
Never
groove.
in the history of this song has it ever been
discussed this in
this
depth.
length.
I think it's a fine dance rock song, and I think a lot of it had to do with Vinnie Poncia too.
Well, let's keep it moving here. We're gonna lift the needle, flip the record, and we get to Charisma.
This is one of my favorites on the record,
and it's interesting because this is deep into an album before we get a vocal performance from Gene.
Yeah, a whole side.
He only has 2 songs on this whole fucking album.
And something, probably my biggest thing on this is the co-write on this song.
Yep.
Howard Marks.
Howard Marks.
Well, only because he just came up with the title Charisma.
Yeah.
That's it.
Why he would give him a credit on that, I don't know. But then again, we weren't there. What do we know? Charisma. This song is stupid, but when I was a little kid,
but I love
this
it.
was like our favorite song on the record.
Is it my sexuality?
Yeah, well, we love that line because it just sounded naughty. and I can remember anybody that had that record that I remembered back in the day to a kid. I was going to say to a man, but to a kid, to each everyone was like, "Charisma's the best song." Everyone loved that song. Everyone loved that song.
Really?
It's so catchy that
I can remember going to the beach that summer, and of course, by then "I Was Made for Loving You" was a big hit, and you'd hear it coming out of the car radios. We'd up and down the Grand Strand there and all, and we'd always every year you'd meet some family and they'd have kids and you make new friends and blah 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 blah. We met some kids that year, and it was like Charisma, man. And we were like, well, "You got the new Kiss album? You like Kiss? Yeah."
I find it weird that
you got
they
the
like.
new album? Yeah, it's great. What's your favorite song? Charisma.
See, I like Charisma. Again, I don't think there's a bad song on this record, but I
I'm
find
just saying
it
from at
odd.
that point in time.
Right. Well, of the Gene songs, because again, honestly, I love Charisma, and this is jumping ahead a little bit. I think X-Ray Eyes is a better Gene song. So
Interesting.
So with people kind of going, they loved Charisma best. I'm sitting here going like, okay, you might just not be an Ace or Paul fan, so you won't like the others. But really, out of those 2 Gene songs, that's the one you pick.
Even when I got older, I got friends that were like, "Oh yeah, I like that one song, Charisma." But I can remember when we got the album. My brother, okay.
I didn't buy it.
And we were listening to it in his bedroom, and I don't know why he's letting me listen to it, but that song's playing, and I can remember my dad coming into the doorway, and he started listening to it, and he starts teasing us, right? He's going, because Gene's voice is sounds kind of aged on this track.
He's singing in a baritone, and not to pull you too far from your story, one of my favorite little things he does is in this song. It's after the solo bit, or kind of it breaks it back down. There's a vocal of him doing high range and a vocal of him doing low range at the same time.
I think that's a vocoder thing doing the bass. What is my?
I think those are 2 vocal tracks. I think he's sitting here doing the what? He's sitting here doing the was my charisma like that, and what the other vocal doing was my charisma.
Well, we were listening to that, and my old man comes in, and he's standing in the doorway, and he's like, "Yep, you hear that, boys? They're getting old. Getting old. They ain't gonna be around much longer."
Damn,
I'll never forget that as long as I live. I don't know why I
won't be
remember that, but I
around
can remember him
much
going
longer though.
Like, shut up! Oh, boys.
40 years later.
I can hear the age. Yep, they're not going to be around much longer. They're getting old. Magic Touch.
It's okay.
I like this one a good bit. Not my favorite of the Paul songs, but it does feel like a leftover of his solo record.
Yeah.
You know what? I love this song. I just love it. I've always loved this song.
It just sounds like he just says she's got the magic touch throughout the entire fucking song.
And you know what? Well, yeah, but
but when she does, that's all you can think about.
That's like the only other line.
I think Paul's 2 songs on this record, or
There's
these
3.
2. There's 3, but of this and Sure Knows Something are the 2 best songs on this record. Mm-hmm. I really do. I just really like it now, and I could see this song being a Loverboy song, which is not a compliment.
Yeah,
but I can, and that's but he does this so well, and it's delivered so well.
And also think,
and I still don't understand what the hell he's singing in that middle part where he starts singing the falsetto.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
and I also think this kind of comes when you flip over to side B, or even starting with maybe not Dirty Living. So yeah, starting with side B, it kind of becomes a full-on hard rock and Kiss record again.
Yeah, it does. It really does. That's good to note. But it's interesting because Har Space is ceded to Ace.
Yep.
Rather than more Gene or Paul, you get another Ace song.
Yeah.
Out of the 5 demos he sent, he gets 3.
Dude, I love this song.
This is Hard Times.
Hard Times.
I don't like it until it gets to that descending part that Ace throws in, like say Coming Home, or those little what is it? What's on Your Mind? Those little dun 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 dun. That's when it picks up for me. Hard Times.
Well, this is an autobiographical Ace tune, or at least quote unquote autobiographical. It doesn't matter.
Okay, real quick, I'm thinking.
I know, it kind of threw him off a little bit.
Is the riff you're talking about is the first riff?
No, I'm talking about the very middle of it, when it kind of does that Coming Home thing, or that What's on Your Mind thing. That
you're talking about the that's not even really part of the song. That's like a pre-solo bit that he only plays like once.
Yeah, but that's when it gets good to me. I don't like the rest. I don't like it leading up to it.
Everything else is great. The riff, the
yeah, but it's
and then even the little walk into the main song with the
but I don't like the way the vocal is. I don't like the way the vocal is, and I know it's Ace. I know it's his vocal. I just don't.
I
Doesn't
totally
mean I have to
understand
like
what you're
it.
saying,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily disagree with you. I remember again, we had the single for "I Was Made for Loving You" before the album came out. And this is the flip side of that single. I'm not even talking into my microphone.
You're in.
Test what do. But I remember this was the flip side, and it was much more preferred to the A side. And I think that's only because at that point, we were reaching. Certainly, I was following my brother's lead. He's reaching puberty, and it's going to be chainsaw rock and roll from then on. So we really like this song. It's clearly not Peter playing drums on this.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that at the time, and we wouldn't have thought that at the time. Of course,
it's just
Peter,
Ace and Anton.
Not only would Peter never play a beat like this, he probably couldn't play a beat like this. This sort of kind of off-time thing.
Yeah.
Just thought about this.
But that doesn't
2000 Man, Hard Times, and Save Your Love all could have been on Ace's solo record, because all it is all Ace and Anton.
Yeah. Well,
I just now thought about that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he's given lots of room on this album. And,
deservedly so. I think he's knocking it out of the park.
I don't know if it feels like he's getting so much room because he's singing his own songs here. And, of course, he's playing all his own stuff. But I'm surprised. I wonder what this track would have sounded like with a Peter-style drum beat.
And it's also interesting that y'all bring that up, too, because they're already citing, if you read, Paul and Gene's comments about Ace at this time, they're already talking about how much of a problem he's becoming, and this, that, and the other,
and
too.
Here he is producing, half of this album almost.
And honestly,
or
I think
creating content for it, I should say.
I think the only bit that Peter probably couldn't have played is those little stop breaks with the.
He would have played it. I think he would have played it straight through, kind of like they talk about the off time thing they tried to do for Flamin' Youth, and instead they just changed it to just a double time thing.
So I think that's the only bit that Peter though wouldn't have been able to do, because you think about the rest of the song. The little breaks heading into the hard times.
It would have been a different feel, is all I'm saying. It's
you were saying that he couldn't have played it.
I'm not shitting his playing. He couldn't have played it like that. It would have been a very different thing, and I think the whole song would have had a different feel, and maybe it would have created a different delivery in a different context.
Probably.
But this seems like as much unkiss-like as I Was Made for Loving You in its own way, just by the fact that it has that kind of offbeat drum part on it.
I don't hear that at all.
Left field compared to Kiss. It's just not a Kiss track.
See, I would say Sure Know Something and I Was Made for Loving You is more non-Kiss tracks.
And you would think that this is the more solid. This is more of a solid song for Ace to be doing than when they go to play when they go to tour to play live songs from this, they choose
I know,
2000
right?
Man instead, because I don't think they could have worked this out. But that's just me. I just,
Yeah, it's a good
I'm not,
point.
it's a good song. I'm not knocking it at all.
Yeah,
but
you
it
are.
just
You
could've-
hate it, Russ. You
No,
hate it.
I don't.
You hate it. That's why you want to change every bit of it.
All right.
It's like you said. It's like
Hey, if y'all think I hate this, wait till we get a little further down.
this is the last of the good years here.
X-Ray Eyes.
I like it. I don't like it as much as Charisma, but I love the part in the chorus where the vocals come in, where it's like it's like
That's usually what happens in the choruses.
those harmony vocals.
Yeah.
I love that.
Honestly, I think X-Ray Eyes is a better Gene song than Charisma. I think this song, if you think about the demon of this era, I feel like this hits home because even the riff is dark. That dun da da dun boom boom is kind of sinister sounding.
You think so?
That take the riff by itself. You're listening to everything wrapped around it.
Now that you're saying it, I can
Individual
hear
notes.
if you did it differently, it could.
His demo version is a lot more sinister.
See, to me, I've always heard this as a bubblegum song.
It is with the way they deliver it.
It's very poppy.
But if you take the piano out of it and literally turn up Gene's bass, it becomes a sinister song because the lyrics.
And slowed the tempo even.
I mean, if you want it to be slow, that's fine. I know you want to slow down this whole record.
No,
that's
I'm
fine.
I'm just saying.
Every song you've said, slow down the tempo.
I haven't.
One thing I've also noticed too is that Gene loves rhyming eyes and lies.
But take the pianos out of that song, take the delivery out of it, listen to the lyrics and what he's saying. I've got X-ray eyes, I can see right through your lies. Someday you'll say you'll come crawling back to me. I'm the one and only. It's not a bubblegummy type lyric. It's almost kind of a revenge. Guess what you just lost out on.
He's trying to make it
see
cinematic
through
a little bit.
I can see through your bullshit. Is what he's saying.
I understand that, but you just made a good point. I've always thought Gene was a lazy lyricist.
Yes.
And I think this is lazy lyrics. I think it's, in fact, let's see what have I wrote in my notes here. I've got, that's what I wrote. Feels a little lazy, but flip the script and change this a little bit. And, this could have been a Ramones song.
Okay, go on.
Now you're really hitting me out of left field. You're going to have to explain
It-
yourself.
I just, because of the whole, that kind of poppy thing, I could hear that power chorded out kind of maybe towards the end of the spectrum where they do something like psychotherapy. But, it just, to me, this just feels like, I guess maybe that sci-fi kind of,
That's what I'm saying. It's a little bit cinematic.
they would do the, a lot of the, gimme shock treatment and that sort of thing. X-ray eyes would have fell in that. I could see this being twisted, not like the way Kiss does it, but I could see this being.
I'm just trying to hear it any other way. I would almost go Hard Times is closer to a Ramones song.
I can hear that.
There's too much turnarounds in that. This guy I could see being
were-
converted to a power chord
Think
thing.
Road to Ruin and all the turnarounds they were doing on stuff like Bad Brain.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that might be fair too, but I'm just saying this seems like a bubblegum rocker to me, and I don't. But the way you just described it, now I'm starting to hear you. I could hear that be a Sabbath riff almost. Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom, boom.
Well, that's still maybe not. I don't know. It still feels poppy to me.
It sounds okay.
Those are pop chords.
Play those chords on an organ and tell me Dracula's not going to raise from his tomb.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I've never ever
hear that
heard
too.
that. I've never heard it that way because I guess we gotta remember I've got 40 years of it being just that way in my brain. Mm-hmm. But I've always loved this song. This is one of my favorite on the album.
All this to say is pretty good.
It's completely silly.
Oh, yeah.
It's completely trite. But you know what? I love it anyway. I always have.
Yep. I agree.
And then the album winds up with "Save Your Love."
Best Ace track on the record.
And a rare Ace and Paul duet.
Yeah, I wonder whose idea that was.
No idea,
It's
but I love
not a duet,
it.
but Paul brings in the
chorus part.
The chorus, and then they got him on the turnaround at the end. Save your love, which is a cool idea. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I don't like this song.
You don't like it?
I've
Really?
never
my
really
favorite
cared
Ace
for it.
song.
Even when I was a little kid, I liked the verse part, but we always thought the chorus was just dorky sounding.
I mean, is it as dorky as like Charisma?
Yeah, it's way dorkier. It's clunky and dorky.
I think it's pretty similar.
I think Charisma's the dorkiest on the record, to be honest. What is my
but I think I like.
Is it my fortune or my fame?
But I agree about the Paul Stanley thing, though. I think having him put that that kind of sass in there, and
Or just that little,
it's odd though. He's not even really the one doing the sass. Ace is doing the "Save your love, I don't want it."
But it
save
feels
your
like
love for someone else.
at the end of the day, this whole album, it's interesting because how many tracks is it? It's only like
Nine.
Nine tracks, yeah.
9.
So it feels like it's like they were short of material. You've got one cover. They've given Ace 3 songs. They've kind of, you would think that they could have given Peter one more song. It wasn't like they didn't have time and space to put it on the record.
Either that or they're just like, this is crap except for this one song.
This is only one track less than Love Gun.
But I don't think that, judging by those demos, I don't know, Out of Control could have fit on this record easily.
I listen to Out of Control.
Well, that's one of the demos that he ended up on his other record. In fact, the Peter solo albums sound like basically brother albums to this because it's the same vibe, the same kind of musician, the same kind of overall kind of production and everything. So yeah, they could have given him more room on this. It just feels like this album is undercooked in a way. It's like
we were talking,
and that is odd that it feels like 9 songs is kind of short because I was doing just a quick little run through just to see comparisons. Love Gun was 10, which included the one cover. But then skipping Alive 2, we go to Gene's solo album. It has 11, but we can take out When You Wish Upon a Star and just round it up to 10, really. But then Ace's album has 9, included Fractured Mirror. So he wrote 8. Peter's had 10 total, and then Paul's had 9 total.
Well, y'all brought up a point earlier about how
those aren't collaborative albums, though. They are, but they aren't. You know what I mean? There's the solo albums. I think, and we talked about, especially Paul's album felt a little.
Well, it feels undercut because everybody's in their own camps putting all this stuff together.
That's what I'm saying.
Too.
It's like it just feels you and I'm saying this also a little bit with hindsight, but it just seems to me that looking at it now, it seems like and given that they had an abnormal length of time off, they could have come. They obviously came to the table prepared with a lot of stuff, but here we've got a cover song. We've got only one Peter song. There's room for at least one more song.
Only
and
2
it's almost
Gene
like they're
songs.
building. It's like there's only the only 3 songs that feel completely fully realized to me are the Paul songs.
Yeah.
Well, Hard Times. Hard Times seems fully realized. But
for an Ace song, I'd agree with that.
The rest of it, like Gene's, both seem kind of a little bit lazy. Ace's song, "The Save Your Love," I don't think is one of, especially compared to Hard Times, it's not near as strong. I don't know. That's how it feels. The album ships on May 23rd, 1979,
and gets a boatload of chart positions, top 10 positions.
Now, real quick, while y'all were talking,
worldwide.
before you move on, I did some nerd research because you were talking about it felt like it was kind of half baked, could have had more on there. Total runtime of the record is 39 minutes.
Oh, well then
you can fit an average of 20 minutes per side.
Right, so that makes sense.
They would have not been able to put another song on this because the reason I wanted to look that up and not just speak, just too fast. This is the first record that's clocking in at every song aside from 2 is over 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
2000 Man is 5 seconds away from being a 5-minute song.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing about 2000 Man. It's just it just feels like what it is. It's a long song. I don't know. I mean,
sorry, I don't want to break it up too bad, but it's like I was kind of thinking about it because I thought about that part too myself.
You've got to consider the primary format of the time is vinyl, and you have the limitations of a vinyl side. It's not CD where you have 70 minutes basically to squeeze shit on there.
Right.
But the album comes out in May of '79, and they begin the pre-production for their tour to support it.
I got some chart positions worldwide that are of significance.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, it becomes in Dutch, it's number one it said
Wait, is
Dutch
this
on
for
the Wikipedia.
Dynasty or for I Was Made for Loving You?
I think Dynasty overall.
Okay.
And then the U.S. it was number 9, Australia number 2, France number 2, New Zealand number 2, Canada number 6, and also wrote in the UK it was at number 50, which I thought was interesting. Like it kind of peaked in the top 10 just about everywhere else, but in the UK, which you would think would be a pretty good market for Kiss.
No, not at that time.
No, it's just like number 50, especially since they're this is like the dance record and everything
Well, this
too.
is but in England you're still kind of in
punk probably,
punk
right?
rock,
Yeah,
yes, to a certain extent. Well, what did Australia what's it say?
number 2.
Yeah, because this
was huge in Australia.
Yeah, this and the next album are, they're really big in Australia. But we'll talk about that more on the next one.
And real quick, I do actually want to put a pin in this episode because we are at roughly an hour right now discussing the record and everything else. I'd like to toss out to the table that we reconvene and make this a 2-parter because the Dynasty tour is almost worth an episode all in its own.
This is an abnormally long tour, and there's a lot of ground, I guess, to cover in that. But
because we can kind of start going into a bit more of the personal things, because this is the last time Peter's really around, because he wasn't really around for the Unmasked session. He showed up for a day just to do the video, but then for everything we've kind of seen, he was out. So, I mean, this is kind of a chance for us to really delve into the ins and outs of what was going on with, the coin management, what everyone was deciding to do with Peter, what was going on with him, and kind of, again, what's our point of the show to kind of separate the fact from the fiction and take all sides of the story and be able to kind of go, well, this is probably what was happening here.
Well,
I'd agree with that.
This is the beginning of the end. This tour, this is the final tour with all 4 original members, so it's kind of significant.
Yep.
So I guess then we'll hold that thought.
Yeah, we'll hold off on the touring conversation. I think that's a whole episode in and of itself.
And hopefully you'll join us for a continuation of the Dynasty era on the next episode of No Time to Turn. For Cap, for Alex, I'm Russ, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please insert another coin by supporting the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/somethinggoodnetwork.